Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com. It is in the description below. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any of our platforms. Please reach out to me directly. I am T Mosso at thewatchbox.com for pricing. Today we are discussing what might be one of the great sports watch designs of the 1990s. Vacheron Constantin's return to sports watches, originally launched in 1996. This is the Overseas self-winding. This is the 42040, the very first model launched in 1996, designed by Dino Modolo and Vincent Kaufman, heavily inspired by Jörg Heisig's 1977 222 sports watch. The Overseas, now in its third generation, continues in the catalog, and this was the plank owner, to use Navy terminology, the original. The watch is substantial for its era, but delightfully compact by the standards of ours. So in steel, 37 millimeters in diameter, 8.6 millimeters thick, and from lug to lug across the case, the span is 48.6 millimeters. The watch is easy to wear, and you can see on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, this was the thinnest standard automatic Overseas until the 2000V ultra thin of the third generation. These are slender watches, competitive in that regard with the Royal Oak Jumbo. You can see how the lugs are nowhere near the edge of my wrist, so you can wear this on a wrist as small as 14 centimeters circumference, maybe even 13 and a half. The watch is slim enough to fit underneath any kind of a cuff, and you can see even over the top that the lugs come nowhere near the edge of my wrist. Down the barrel, you get an even better sense of how broad this watch is across my wrist, and this is actually a watch that I can recommend for him or for her. Definitely give it a try. This is a timepiece that defies easy categorization. I'd call it unisex by today's standards. The bracelet is the most intricately assembled and finished in the entire history of the Overseas line. As you can see externally, the outer faces are polished. There's a rolled bevel between them that extends the bevel of the case. Then we have staggered link alignment and staggered link size with an interior channel. As you can see, there are two channels down the center of that bracelet, and each channel has been internally polished, and that on both the inner face of the outer link and the outer face of the inner link. It's deeply impressive. We have a bracelet fixed to the case using screws and bars. As good as it gets, this gives you absolute security against accidental release. The individual links are removable. You can see they are fixed by screws, no pin sleeves here. And we have several of them, including intermediate-sized links in case you're in between sizes. The attention to detail is superb. You can see these are internally mirror-polished for a slick, luxurious feel against the skin. We have an unusual clasp. Now, these are double folding, and what happens is you fold, then you move a little trigger that locks it. You can see open, closed, open, closed. I usually leave it open for the sake of these videos just to make sure it's easy to demonstrate. But you have two different locking factors. You have this little internal Maltese cross slider, and then there is a clamshell externally that's the second lock, and you can see it too has that little Maltese cross motif built into it. It is polished and satinated and quite attractive. This is a rather involved clasp, but rest assured the watch is going to stay put on your wrist. We have a screw-down crown with a set of stubby, almost symbolic shear guards, but they will provide you a measure of security against shearing off this screw-down crown. The watch is 150 meters water resistant. You can see on the reverse of the case, 15 ATM. On the reverse of the case, note the different finishes. We have a screw-fixed caseback, and it has that Maltese cross motif that echoes the design of the bezel, so there's a lovely parallelism there. That caseback is externally circumferentially satinated. Then you can see that its inner step features a sort of lapping machine radial satination. We have polish for the waves and the square-rigged ship, and then a sort of chiseling or blasting that sits representing the sky behind the ship. Now, the ship is inspired by the Italian naval training vessel Amerigo Vespucci, and if you've seen that ship, you realize that it has earned its reputation as one of the most beautiful full-rigged ships in the world. It's an Italian naval training vessel for cadets, and it plies the world's seas and oceans. Very traditional, with a lovely man-of-war tiered hull layout that's just gorgeous under sail, and so it is the basis for that Overseas ship. Back to the dial side, Anthracite metallic sunburst, white gold hands, date frame, logo, and indices. You can see this is one of the last appearances of a sigma dial on any watch. These a priori marks named after a Swiss precious metals trade organization that encouraged watchmakers during the 70s, starting in the early 70s, to put this little sigma-looking symbol on the dial if the hands and the indices are made of gold. And, well, most companies were done with that by the end of the 90s, but Vacheron continued to use it on the 1996 to 2003 first generation Overseas. So we've got those little sigma marks. We also have, and I'm going to make this very clear so you can see to good effect, that this is one of the later Luminova dials, so still sigma, but not one of the earliest tritium dials. This was later production. I also love the vaulted Vacheron logo and city of origin up at the top. Rather than printing it linear across the dial, it traces the arc of the inner case. We have dart-style applique indices. The watch is a little bit more sophisticated in some ways than even the current generation Overseas. It's got two features the current generation Overseas does not. First, the current generation Overseas self-winding does not have hacking seconds. This does. Stop the seconds hand and easily adjust the watch to match your reference time. The other feature, you can see it also has a, let's just get out of the date change danger zone here. You can see it also has a hacking seconds function that allows you to rapidly cycle the date, but that's a feature you can find on the current Overseas. The feature this has that the current Overseas does not have is a COSC chronometer certification. You can see it says chronometer on the dial. Indeed, it has gone through the full roughly 2-week COSC test per the ISO 3159. It's been tested in 5 positions and at temperature as a caliber 1310 automatic movement, and it has earned a chronometer certificate. This movement is ultra thin and fine, and in its previous life known as the Girard-Perregaux Series 3100. So it is a GP movement, high horology, nicely finished, 5-position adjusted, chronometer certified, unidirectional automatic winding with a 46-hour power reserve, 4 Hz beat rate, pivots on 27 joules. It does have the hacking and the quick set, and it's water resistant courtesy of the case down to 150 meters. So this GP movement is a beautiful high horology base caliber, gorgeously decorated and adjusted by Vacheron Constantin. The timepiece is timeless, and they're fairly rare, as later versions of the first generation Overseas self-winding very scarcely come up. You can see that the finishing on the case is equivalent to what you would get on something like a Nautilus or an Aquanaut, with different kinds of finishes, including polish, satination, we have beveling, and if you look at the recesses of the bezel, you can see the outer bezel is polished, whereas the recesses of the bezel are internally satinated. Just gorgeous hand finish all the way down to the clasp. This watch is built to be seen and built to be loved. It's built to last, with the kind of artisanal finishing that is scarcer and scarcer in modern watchmaking. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.